Hello, Monday. We're going to have a UK economy special. So let's start with the Telegraph UK and UK consumer confidence jumps in sunny May, where we read, the group said the almost unprecedented jump in consumer confidence could be due to feel-good factors following the royal wedding and extended bank holiday weekends in April, as well as the recent let-up in negative reports about the economy. Well, let's do a serious report about the economy. And this link to Tullett Prebon and their top financial analyst man gives us no way out why the British economy is in very deep trouble. That's the PDF. And where we get this opening chart. Number 1, Keynesian, deficits and growth, 1996 to 2010. And what we've got in this chart is government deficits in blue and growth, the line in red. And Gordon Brown would say he was very prudent and everything he was doing was very right. Because we can see in 98, 99, 2000, 2001, there was no deficits. And even the deficits, the rest of them, up until the problems, were just around 3%. Very prudent. Everything was going very well, and the government deficits only blew out when the world troubles came upon poor old United Kingdom, and then the government had to spend in a Keynesian way all that extra, and growth in red still went down. But as we can see in the next chart, rather confusingly, but you can see the shape of the government deficit has now changed colour from blue to red, but it's exactly the same shape. Down in 97, 98, 2000, you can see that, and going up towards the end. It's now in red, the government deficits, but now we've got the people have been put in here and how much credit they're taking on. Credit in light blue, which is other credit besides mortgage, and mortgages are in dark blue. And we can see from 96 to 2002 in the left-hand box, the average joint amount between government and the people was 4.9% of debt being taken on as a percentage of GDP. But after 2002 and up to 2010, that average of the people and the government was 11.2%. And you can see this extra little bar at the end now, 2011, it's dropped down to just over 10%. But it's still 10% of GDP of debt being taken on by UK PLC. Right, so we get what they call a skewed boom, real output by industry. This is what's happened to various industries from the year 2000 up to the year 2007, pre-bust. So the years pre-bust. Let's start at the bottom. And we get other mining and quarrying, which in those years, 2000 to 2007, went backwards. It lost 28%. Manufacturing was down 26%. Agriculture, forestry and fishing was back 17%. Oil and gas, presumably North Sea oil falling back, was down 12%. Electricity, gas, water, transportation, storage, wholesale and retail were up a little bit, giving us our average in the middle there of GDP was up 14%. That was compounded, presumably. Yeah, some sort of compounding. Giving us the average there, GDP in the middle. So something was really pushing it up if all those other things were going backwards or going forwards at a very small rate. And the things that were going up at a decent click, and note now the sectors in red are wholly or predominantly in the public sector. Next one up is public administration and defence, which was up 22%. Real estate, which was up 26%. Education, obviously that's in the public sector, up to 27%. Construction, that's construction that's not real estate, up 27%, and the huge financial services up 123% across the top. Those are the sectors that were doing so well, pushing up the GDP. This is a simplified version of that. 2000 to 2009, construction, real estate and finance up 42, public sector up 28, the economy in general up 15, because all other industries were down 5, and it's a balance between those, but it makes an average of plus 15 from things that went up and things that went down. The implication is going to be that the things that went up so much in the future are projected to come down so much. So what is going to go up so much? We read the nature of addictive borrowing. To understand the conundrum posed by a growing capital debt base and diminishing growth, we need to distinguish between two types of debt. These are termed self-liquidating and non-self-liquidating. If the owner of a successful restaurant borrows to invest in additional seating space, the debt is self-liquidating, because it will be serviced and paid from the higher income that the expanded restaurant will generate. But borrowing to pay for a new car or foreign holiday is non-self-liquidating, because it is a form of consumption which does not leverage the borrower's income. Though the parallels are necessarily less than exact, the sharp fall in Britain's return on capital reflects the fact that the overwhelming bulk of new borrowings have been non-self-liquidating. If you've seen images of the young people binge drinking of the weekend, that surprisingly is non-self-liquidating. Right. That the property market could not go on rising indefinitely was demonstrated in dramatic fashion when the average prices fell, etc., etc. Let's have a look at those. We've got property prices going up, and the yellowed numbers are the price to earnings multiple. The amount of your mortgage to the wages. We can see the dark blue, the pricing of housing going up and up, from 3.2 to 5.7 and dropping now down to 4.5. But is that too much? Well, look along the bottom in the light blue, and those are earnings, and they really haven't been going up very much at all. So why has the price of housing been going up? The price of housing has been going up because a lot of people have been borrowing to buy housing. Number 9 is the collapse of private borrowing. It's kind of a repeat of one of the earlier charts, and we can see where it's stepped up from 1996 to 6 years of over 100 billion a year borrowing by the people. And you can see how it has now collapsed over the last 3 years and is now negative. Number 11, running out of steam, the end of the debt-based economy. Again, a repeat of an earlier chart. We've seen that before. It was boxed in where we had the first part of the decade at 5.3% average between the people and government, which in the end went up to 11.2%, and government forecasts for their borrowing has now been put into to the end of this chart, and forecasts for the people borrowing, and it drops down again to 5.1%. And the drive of this is, where is the growth going to come from? Just because it goes down to 5.1%, it doesn't necessarily mean that growth goes down by 5%. But the question is, to say that it won't, why won't it? And we get the conclusions: prepare for the worst. As this report has shown, past dependence on substantial levels of annual incremental borrowing has put Britain into a high-debt, low-growth trap. Because growth was feeble even when fueled by the continuous injection of debt-funded demand, the outlook, now that the country's borrowing capacity has been maxed out, may be for extremely low economic growth. The collapse in borrowing has dreadful implications for two of Britain's 8 biggest industries, real estate and construction, and may have adverse implications for a third, financial services. After another three big sectors, health, education and public administration and defence, are necessarily ex-growth now that the expansion of public spending is over. Together, these 6 sectors account for 58% of the economy, which makes the delivery of aggregate growth very difficult and perhaps impossible. The UK is already showing unmistakable signs of economic deterioration. Real incomes are declining, a trend to which individuals are leveraged by the high and increasing cost of such non-discretionaries as foods, fuel and utility bills, which are really projected to go up an awful lot. To make matters worse, interest rates rises may seem inevitable either for policy, inflation reasons, or because of bond market jitters. If the outlook is indeed for low growth, the government's growth-dependent deficit reduction plan won't work. And if the plan were to come unstitched, sterling would come under severe pressure, exacerbating inflationary pressures and compounding the misgivings of international investors holding British debt. Bond market jitters. Further analysis of the very worrying economic and fiscal outlook for the UK will be set out in a forthcoming project, Thinking the Unthinkable, which will present the conclusions of the Armageddon project. Meanwhile, it would be by no means unreasonable to conclude that, short of almost unthinkably drastic restructuring, there may be no way out of Britain's low-growth, high-debt trap. And that's Dr. Tim Morgan, Global Head of Research, and the last link is for Tullett Prebon, the people who he works for, that I've used most all of their information to make this video. But I think it's a decent enough presentation to make an almost exclusive video using it. It'll take more than royal weddings and a bit of sunshine. Have a good week. Bye.